The pen shook between her fingers while the room shimmered with holiday lights and muted laughter, a bitter contrast to the chaos tightening around her heart. Surrounded by sateen gowns, confident smiles, and the soft chime of raised glasses, Elena Ashford lowered her gaze and signed her divorce papers at a Christmas gathering that felt less like a celebration and more like a public surrender. No one noticed the tear that traced silently down her cheek. And no one, absolutely no one, knew who she truly was. Before the story moves forward, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of truth to transform lives, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment and subscribe to World of Kindness. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Your support truly means more than you realize. The Ashford mansion had never felt so cold. Despite the glowing ornaments and carefully placed candles, Elena sat at the long dining table, shoulders slightly rounded, her dark wool coat still wrapped around her as if it were armor. Soft carols drifted through the air, but they barely touched her. Her entire world had narrowed to the thin stack of papers beneath her hand, and the weight of a choice she never imagined making in front of people who once claimed her as family. Around her stood faces filled with quiet judgment, people convinced they understood her story. To them, Elena was fragile, ordinary, expendable. For years, she had been the unobtrusive one. She married into privilege without realizing how quickly comfort could turn into control. How easily affection could fade when measured against reputation and appearances. She set aside her own dreams, choosing harmony over ego, calm over recognition. When her marriage began to unravel, she tried to mend it quietly, hoping discretion might preserve what love no longer could. But discretion rarely survives in rooms crowded with opinion. As she signed, the expressions surrounding her cut deeper than any spoken insult. Polite smiles masked satisfaction. Side glances carried silent verdicts. A few barely hid their amusement. In their eyes, Elena was the woman who failed, the one who couldn't hold her place in a world obsessed with status. They believed she had been fortunate to belong at all. And now, even that fortune had expired. The party continued graceful, detached as though her heartbreak were merely another decoration hanging from the tree. What no one there understood was that Elena had mastered silence long before she ever learned compromise. She was raised on discipline, responsibility, and humility, not because she lacked choices, but because she was taught to value depth over display. Her past was carefully concealed, not out of embarrassment, but intention. Years earlier, she had stepped away from extraordinary wealth, determined to build a life defined by authenticity rather than inheritance. She never spoke of her father, Richard Ashford, a man whose name shifted industries, and whose presence commanded rooms far more powerful than this one. Elena believed love should stand on its own, free from the scaffolding of money or influence. She believed people revealed their true nature when they assumed no one important was watching. And tonight, beneath the warm glow of Christmas lights, she was witnessing that truth firsthand. When the pen finally left the page, a strange stillness settled over her. The pain remained heavy, undeniable, but beneath it grew something unexpected: clarity. She understood that this room, these people, and this chapter no longer held authority over her future. What they perceived as defeat was, in truth, liberation. She folded the documents neatly, her hands steady now, and placed them on the table. As the evening wore on, whispers traveled through the room, none of them carrying the truth. No one knew that earlier that day, a private jet had landed quietly at a nearby airstrip. No one noticed when a few unfamiliar guests arrived, dressed simply, yet carrying an unmistakable air of command. And no one connected the way Elena straightened her posture when she sensed, rather than saw, the presence of someone who had always recognized her strength. The shift came without spectacle. No announcement. No grand reveal, just the subtle arrival of real power. When Richard Ashford entered the room, conversations slowed. Some guests recognized him instantly, others felt the change without understanding it. His eyes scanned the room until they found Elena, and in that single moment, the entire evening changed. Laughter faded, smiles tightened. Confidence drained from those who had quietly mocked her. Richard didn't raise his voice or demand attention. He simply stood beside his daughter, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. That single gesture spoke louder than any declaration. Those who had looked down on her now struggled to meet her gaze. The truth settled heavily among them. Elena was not a woman who had lost everything. She was someone who had deliberately walked away from excess. And now, she was free to step forward on her own terms. She sought no revenge, no satisfaction. What mattered was the quiet dignity of being seen as she truly was, not as others assumed. She understood then that those who had whispered and smiled had revealed far more about themselves than they ever intended. And she realized that strength isn't measured by how loudly one wins, but by how gracefully one endures. As she left the gathering, the Christmas lights seemed softer, less mocking, more hopeful. The cold night air felt lighter, as though years of weight had finally lifted from her shoulders. Elena moved forward not as someone saved, but as someone reclaimed. Her future stretched wide ahead of her, no longer shaped by judgment or expectation, but by choice. If this story touched your heart, if Elena's quiet resilience moved you even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to World of Kindness. Your support allows us to continue sharing stories that remind us of compassion, dignity, and hope. Before we end, we have one final request. Comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know, because sometimes the people who appear weakest are carrying the greatest strength. And sometimes, the quietest tears mark the beginning of the most powerful new chapter.